Hi, everyone. I called this meeting. Um, I was sharing a little bit with the others on the call, and I'm very grateful to have here that for the past years, I would say since about 2014. In 2014, I took on a path, and the path was to see if a human being could get to the evolutionary aspect of their mind. They could evolve it past the constant looping caught in concepts, tortured by thought mechanism that the human mind had found itself in. And by the human mind, I mostly mean human perception. But I also mean the fact that the human brain, according to brain scientists, is more likely to register pain than pleasure. I don't think it was always that way. And so to rectify um, the balance between pain and pleasure, where pleasure, when children come to this planet, even though they're born through the birth process, they seek pleasure quite naturally. And the creation templates I was given way back around 2010, they were literally to reset the human conceptual mind and to refabric the sentient mind and to have some muscle for receiving both pain and pleasure with less traumatic effect. Um, and if you don't believe that, there's the same type of trauma that happens if you've been beaten to the type of trauma if overnight you become a star, famous. It's very similar. We don't have tolerance as human beings haven't for a long time for our own ability to feel, our own ability to register emotion. Uh, we've we've gotten dulled down. But starting in 2014, I backed off of what actually a few people on this call, particularly Deb, knew me as for a long time, 50 years, um, which was a channel and a mystic and a seer and a prophetess. And I didn't step out into um, what I stepped out to into 2014, but I was guided by my source of what sources me. Doesn't have a thingness to it. It isn't like God or divine or anything. It's an energy that is part of what takes care of life here. As many energies do to come out and do this body of work that I've been in. The last body of work that I never thought I'd get to do ever was what is called now the Magician of Self. It sounds like almost a tacky vaudeville title, I guess, but I knew from the time I was young that something had taken away me as part of the magic of creation. And being the stubborn little girl I was, I just wasn't going to have it. I really didn't know at some point that stubbornness would also have me realize how much I love humanity and how much I love being human, and that I would begin to fight for the right of a human being to be themselves in various and sundry means. The things that I contributed to, the things that I participated in, and the things that I taught, and the things and how I lived. But it was always about 23, 24, 25, 26. It's always about those years from my early 30s. It was always about this moment in time. So I could legitimately say that this conversation today is brought to you by creation. Each one of us in our own way, whether we think it's a guardian angel or a higher power, or just some feeling we have that we're not alone, or most of us do feel alone. that it's impossible to consider that we as human beings are not directly connected to creation. We think the flowers are, the stars are, we think the animals are. So are we. And every now and then, this species, this little human, delicate species, can't go any further in its own playground, just like children in a playground at some point. They have to be helped and supported, not because they're puny, but because they're part of larger powers and forces of creation that they're evolving into. They're evolving to remembering, and they're evolving being part of. So some of you may know that for the last, since December 1st, 2023, I've been biologically at risk in a strange phenomenon that my heart was going through. And on April 18th, they probably fixed it. And I want to try to explain it. And I'm actually not sure I can, which is why I said in my little clip, I hope people who had heart conditions came on. But something happened because it took every bit of my own consciousness, my own my own unity, my own union with creation, source, spirit. That whole time, I was I had to be so concentrated on every minute of every day. I had to be so source based. What would that mean? That would mean that if it was my time to go, I wanted to know that and be able to go. If it was my time to stay, I wanted to be able to know that. And I wanted to be able to get access to what that would take. And I went through a very specific shift. I reviewed my life. I didn't mean to review my life. It's just that when you are basically lying flat, scared to move because your blood pressure might go up to 240 and your PVC and your heart might stop beating. I realized I could review my life and realize from a very early age, uh, I was starting to track what traumatized me being here. Everything from being teased at school because I was heavy to violence with my mother to other things that happened as I grew up. And it was one thing before this condition, it's one thing to remember it and work on it mentally, but I was re-experiencing the terror and the trauma from a very, very young age. Not as young as some, I will say that, but from about 5 years old on, increasingly more traumatizing. And all I could think, uh, sort of like Peggy's song is that, oh, there is my friends, and let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball, if that's all there is. But I was under the weight of the pressure of I had to live, or I had to do my best to live. And it was a very moment to moment experience. I think I was taking my blood pressure 5 times a day and having very specific symptoms that were life challenging, physical life challenging. And the stillness I had to get access to, the calm, the quiet in the face of my body not being calm or quiet. It was running cortisol and it was spiking blood pressure. And for those of you who have anxiety or terror, you might start taking your blood pressure. Might not be you, might be your body. And so this relationship between the flesh and the spirit, my body, became not only paramount, but the complete foreground of my existence for 4 months. I did the prophetics and I stayed doing the work because the whole purpose of the work is restoring a human being's ability to be what they were designed to be. So it wasn't like I was trying to survive. So because people were paying me money, it was that in the work I had a chance. In the prophetics, I had a chance because I had to be what I needed to be to you uh, in order for me to uh, do that. I had to be in touch with what was moving through me to be provided for you. And in that, it was also provided for me wholeness, oneness, of what the direct link to creation that we are. So I really hold that the community, the cultural wisdom community of the field of Tantramat, my friends and family, my caretakers, medical and non-medical, uh, and the greater sources of creation of which I experience being a part, all were there in one fell swoop. I wasn't separate from anything. And all I could think was, my body has a chance. In that environment, my body has a chance. And the big thing that opened up, the biggest thing that opened up was my emotional world. I wasn't stopping my emotions were not being stopped by concepts or thoughts or opinions or judgments. It was just raw. And I could easily feel that I had very little muscle for that depth of emotion that I was experiencing. That I wanted the dullness. I wanted the numbness. I wanted the deadness. I wanted everything to stop being so alive. And I knew something was fundamentally in error about that. So maybe some of you, I think it's off Facebook now, but my first Smith's grocery store event by the meat and chicken and fish area was right around the corner from that. I hadn't had the procedure yet, and I was reaching for something I couldn't reach on the top shelf of of the cooler, oat milk. And I asked the man that worked there if he'd reach it. And the way he reached it, all the world slowed down, the same kind of slowed down that happens when you're in a car wreck. Everything slowed down. I could hear his hand wrap around the oat milk. I could hear the plastic container moving across the glass. I watched him as he carefully pulled it out and turned and took my hand and placed the bottom of the oat milk in my palm. And his kindness was overwhelming. And I sobbed. So I went out to the car after I paid for everything and I did a Facebook Live, not because I wanted to be popular or make a difference, but because I knew if I wasn't transparent in the depths of that emotion for myself, I might lose that opportunity to register life at that level. And in my age group, I'm 77. In my age group, there are things we have the opportunity to register that while it's also true at other age groups, it's more popular at ours. Death, a decline of physical capacity. There's um, I could feel that there was value in um, not being separate from that, not being I'm just going to text somebody something. Um, Not being separate from that, that there was something about feeling that wasn't traumatizing at all. It was just deep and rich and life. It was the feeling of lifing. And I wanted that. And I didn't know how to get it. Just like I also don't know how to, um, hold on, I just need to send a text. Um, I didn't know how. But also, there's some phenomenon when we're not resisting life anymore, when we're not trying to assess it or judge it or fight it or figure out how we have to be in it. There's something that is so precious. It isn't surrender and it isn't giving up or giving in. It's something else, connection. So I got the most beautiful Facebook messages back from people I haven't heard from in years, old clients, old friends, old family I hadn't heard of, several steps removed. And I realized that something was different in me. And I kept saying, I don't know me anymore. But I couldn't miss by my saying I didn't know me anymore, that there was a me I thought I was, that I wasn't anymore. And the question was I ever really that? Or was that just what I needed to be here until now? So that question of, is that what I needed to be here until now, stayed with me. It grabbed me. And I realized that activity was touching something deeper and it was ageless. It had nothing to do with me being 77. That somehow there was a question. And that question was, am I being who I am to be here now? Which suggested there could be a new now. And the answer was no, no, no. But I had, by then, I had a gap. And I had a gap between what I had learned to do to survive socially, physically, because a lot of us ate badly in those eras to survive trauma, still do. Addiction is nothing more than trying to survive trauma, by the way, and any kind of addiction. And all of a sudden, I had this empty place and this next thought. And the next thought was, wow, I know a body does what it does to have a human being survive. That's its job. And that includes dying so that the soul, the spirit of the spirit that's part of the greater soul of creation can do it again, figure out, start in with a clean slate again, or having learned a lot and be able to take on what has just been too much in that point of time, not in a human identity evolution, but at that point in time, that's as far as a human being could go. And I didn't know if it was that point in time for me, but it didn't seem like it because I was doing a body of work that I never thought I'd be able to do. I never thought the consciousness, the constitution of the consciousness of human beings could evolve past their trauma-based identity. And yet I was watching people that were evolving past their trauma-based identity. And where do you go? Deb Merchant, who's on this call, she did her dissertation about we all are familiar with developing a sense of the ability to cope with a sense of trauma, and we become that identity of having coped, but we don't know what it is to exist in a world, even if it's just our own bubble, even if it's our own energy field that just might be trauma free, regardless of circumstance, regardless of events. And that's templates 3 and 4, which a lot of work is being done on in the field of Tantra Mat right now. I work with in the field of Tantra Mat. And all this is the coherence in a community that keeps pinging from different places. People are at work on evolving. I never called it evolving. I never thought of it as evolving, even though my whole working life I have not I've not had a powerful relationship with the terminology recovering from trauma. Not that it isn't an accurate thing to do. It's just that recovering the self that is non-trauma based was much more interest to me. It was my calling, you would say. So I'm back in Smith's grocery store. This time I was at getting me a hamburger for my granddog. And all of a sudden, it was like a orchestra, a non-audible audient orchestra filled Smith's. And I heard a voice because I am clairaudient, and much of my young life was based on that voice. And it saved my spirit and gave me a way to live I never suspected I would ever have. And as clear as a bell, it says, humanity needs to take back their right to evolve. And I realized everything reframed itself. And I realized standing there that actually, without my meaning to, without my understanding what was going on, that my knowing my body could not stay vibrant in the condition it was in, and that I could not stay here having a vital life without the body being able to be vital, had triggered me into my own evolutionary process, had triggered me out past the edge of everything I knew, everything I'd ever been, all the values that I thought were life. It just all triggered me out past that. And I was in the face of the not yet known, but that my body wasn't just recovering itself. It had always been wounded from the day it was born. It had been traumatized most of its life. It had lived in a trauma-centric reality. And it had it had never it learned all the social structures that allowed it to uh, have affiliations and belonging. And so I went out to the car and did the video. Maybe the next time I'll do it right in the middle of Smith's. That would take courage. Not sure I have that yet. But I went out and I had to, again, capture it. I had to give it a place. I had to be transparent. It wasn't like I knew anything more. It was just that I realized with all the studies I've done and all the work I've done and everything I pay attention to, and particularly the other source-based beings that I interact with, that we all somehow had one thing in common. We were clear about our source space, not the name of it, because I don't know the name of mine. Call it the realms of the beloved, because I just know it's connected to what loves humanity and seeks it to remember itself as this as its planetary, as the planetary form it was designed to be. But that's my source space. Other human beings have other source spaces. But I realized that what had been thwarted, what had been stifled, was that there's a phenomenon on this planet that can't be messed with. And the phenomenon is that this planet and her forms always evolve, always evolve. And that there was a different mindset if one took on one's evolution in a newness of what was evolving and not caught in all the trauma centricity of the devolution, because you can't have evolution without devolution. Not get caught in the devolution, but actually find the muscle and the capacity and the maybe paths that honored the evolutionary process. So I have a little bit more to say about the right to evolve, but I'm going to unpin me. I can figure out how to do this. Remove my pen. And I'm going to turn it over to the people that are sitting with me today for anything they want to add or share. So over to you all.
There we go. I took notes on a couple of things, so let's see. This is a really simple and very complex conversation. So I think I'll start with the life will find a way. I've heard that phrase a lot and didn't really have my relationship to it has been changing in the last several years. Um, so, well, this is hard to know where to start. Sorry, folks. Um, there's ways that I'd say my process has been parallel because I've had a heart condition, different one from Tantra, and restoring from it has lasted longer for whatever combination of reasons. But I do remember, I'm just trying to kind of ping off of some of Tantra's points. I do remember several points where it felt like who I'd constructed myself to be, not doing it consciously, knowingly, but sort of all the factors that come together that have people uh, express and be who they're being. Um, I really felt like it all got yanked away from me. Um, because I couldn't do the things I had done. So the interface was gone. And in the process of rebuilding my health, I've become very present to all kinds of other options for myself and therefore for humanity, a lot of which have been talked about for eons. But even having an intellectual connection, or even what's below that, of just feeling resonant with that, connected to it, didn't mean I knew I had a living comprehension. So the living comprehension started to rise. And the me I'd become, because of all of the historical factors, meaning everything from, events of my life, as well as number of people in my family, to the way the light is where I grew up, and all the factors that resulted in a me. But I never included body. And bless Lori and Victoria, there's been a lot of times they've said amazing things, and then I'm like, huh, because they're very steeped in the world of body and that intelligence. They're very facile and wise and well founded there. And I'm like, huh? But it's really that awareness and wisdom, and I don't want to say this because that's too easy to go mental. That living experience has begun to be more and more and more uh, real, and that a lot else has been available, and capacity to choose which domains uh, we're mine to be in. The gift and grace of choice is astonishing to me, way, way beyond what I thought it was. I wouldn't say it's been an easy journey by any stretch of the imagination, but what it's leading towards is remarkable, even on the things that where there's still no guarantees. There's no guarantees. I have preferences. There's things I'm aiming towards or tacking towards. Uh, but I don't have guarantees. And a, that's been one of the biggest mysteries, is finding life in a balance with being fully who I am without the guarantee that X expression means I've succeeded. Because it doesn't. It just may get to be an expression. And discovering creativity. Because in the early days, I decided to make gardening my physical therapy because I love gardening anyway. It's so a part of who I am that I've even just picked up and moved when the management of the apartment complex said, you have to stop gardening. You can't garden around the townhouse anymore. So I came home and informed a family, including Tantra, we're moving. You can come with me or not. I'm moving. Hopefully it's a we. So I made that like a central point, and I've had to be very creative to figure out ways to get things done because I couldn't do them the way I used to. And more importantly, I had to build skills for collaboration, which has been a surprise. None of it's turned out quite like I thought it was. So the right to evolve seems to be more of, in my uh, way of looking at things, an innate um, driver. And Maslow talks about it like self-actualization, that's what everybody heads towards automatically, innately, even I would say joyfully, even when it's not joyful. But it doesn't mean the right to evolve, I think, means more of a conscious awareness and conscious participation with your own self, your own life, and others, whatever other is in your life. Because it's like it's happening anyway. Even in one lifetime, you go from baby to adult to, or teenager, adult, old person. Even in one lifetime, there's evolution. It's built in. But the conscious awareness of there's so much more available and so many dimensions to that potential did not become available until a whole lot of stuff got stripped away. And I'm not advocating that. I do not think that has to be the path for everybody. I'm saying it got to be real obvious for me, and for Tantra. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there and let other folks
I
chime
just
in.
I want to add one thing. We're doing this all month. It's my request. Because in the work of the field of Tantra Mud, it's about giving something a place. And if even one person that listens to this recording can shift out of the terror of the evolutionary process,
Mm-hmm.
it's all worth it to me. Because there is a terror. Our
Mm-hmm.
mindsets are organized to identify ourselves a certain way and to belong to our community a certain way and to belong to each other a certain way. And it's impacting how I do business, how I will be doing business. It
Mm-hmm.
impacts because it's a new now for me. It isn't a right wrong, it's just a new now. And we were told very young that we were selfish if we tried to self care, almost all of us, and that our value was the function to our society, including killing ourselves on the killing field of war. And I think the greater powers and forces of creation of which we are a part are waking up in us as us and saying no more, but not against, just let's be something new. Thank you, Deb. If you'd mute yourself for someone else.
I was struck when you said that what you were was probably what you needed to be until now. And we often talk about the historic personality. And it felt so compassionate to say it was okay. We have been who we needed to be until this moment in time. And now the goldfish water, right? The goldfish doesn't know he's in water. The water he swims in. We didn't know the water we were swimming in. And we all figured out ways to cope with that. And I'm really conscious of that nowadays, to look that when I do a behavior, I go, sometimes it's new and I go, oh, I like that. I do something differently. At the same time, I can feel my historic way of doing it was a survival, was how do I survive in the world? But I think like I can take some of mine back to my childhood, and the survival mechanisms of my childhood aren't appropriate anymore. And yet they fight. Some of them are still fighting for, no, it's not safe. You have to do this. So it's a give and take process. I think there is, the old thing that we say, 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. I think I think it is 3 steps forward, but not 2 steps back. But that's what it feels like to me in the process that we're in. And if I think we can all have compassion for the process that our systems, our historic personality, and these they almost seem like more natural ways of being are coming in, and just let the historic personality give up what it's had to hold, and say, it's okay. You don't have to hold that anymore. And I think that's the part of the way forward. I'm complete.
Beautiful. Thank you, Electra.
That draws me into like Tai Chi. I mean, I think that's what draws me so intently and like fully into that notion of we are the universe and the universe is us. There's this life, and within the life, there's a small smidgen of dark or non-life. In, the vastness of my spirit, there is a bit of humanness. In the vastness of my humanness, there's a bit of spirit. And through my own history, that was access to sustain and maintain. And within that operational way of being in the sustaining and maintaining, beyond that deep connection to life, I just lost my train of thought, but I'm feeling it so deeply. Oh, there's
That's the beauty of you, Lori.
yeah, it's like the ability to be cognizant of the masks in which we put on, so we can connect more deeply to that smidgen of life. My experience has been, the more that I'm connecting with life, those masks fall away. And I appreciate you, Tantra, to say, like, I need to presence these moments. And I too have moments. The older I get, the more I have moments like that. Like, wow, I'm like 100% with whoever I'm with. And it's beautiful. It's joyous. It's not only evolving my own deeper connection to that life, it's creating space for others to evolve. And we are all in that. It draws me to like the amoeba. If you poke an amoeba, it'll just like, and it'll reshape to its fullness. But if you poke that amoeba so much and focus on that, you know, the traumatic events, or, you know, the moments away from life, it stays there. So there's always that moment, because the only thing that's constant is change, so that we are constantly in evolutionary processes. That's life, that's death, that's all of it together. And for me, finding that Tai Chi, that balance, harmony, symmetry, the you know, the principles of Tantra Mat, it like creates such an embodied expansiveness that is our birthright. And to connect with that, to hold space for that, you know, the people that supported me through my traumatic events, I'll never forget this. One of the main statements she was said to me is like, I just want you to be able to function every day. Now, as a 13-year-old, that was like much different than what it means now. And, you know, I mean, it's like, oh, yes, thank you for that now. Before, I'm like, what? There's something wrong with me. I have to learn how to function, you know? And that, you know, helped mold those organizing foundational ways of being in upon earth. So I can rest upon those and then just keep blossoming in my functioning. It's more, you know, that redefinition of the word function. It's no longer that, it's like, yes, I'm functioning with life. What better gift I can give myself and others? So I love this conversation. And Tantra, as you spoke, I was like sitting on your shoulders because I was right there with you. So thank you. I am complete.
I think that I made some notes that I want us to keep pursuing over the month, but we're all highly functional people, and the actual dramatic challenge of what function is now for me, not function because of capability, no longer because of physical capability. I mean, I now have low blood pressure and I now have a steady beating heart. But whatever I was being driven by, it's gone. It's just plain gone. And I can promise you that I have not ever lived without being driven. And I'm sure of that from the 3 years old when I realized what I came here to be. And so my inquiry is, wow, what is function? How do I get to function when it isn't about being driven? And I've had a lot of empty days the last week because I could tell I was trying to drive myself to do something that I thought I should be doing, but there wasn't any life in it. There wasn't vitality. And some of it was pretty good stuff. So actually finding that thing you said, so the amoeba can keep amoebaing, is a really good body register for me. And I appreciate that. Victoria, anything for you?
I do have an interesting reconfiguration from what you said, Electra, of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. For me, the past couple of years, I don't know how many, it feels like a 3 steps back, 1 step forward. And in saying it like that, I want to presence the evolution, devolution of that, in the notion that for me, the 3 steps back has been from before COVID time, a conversation that I had with you, Tantra, about opening up to my own realm of beloveds, whatever they would be called. And the fear, the horror, the terror of that might really be so. That there are beloveds that want to be in relationship with me. And for me, that had that devolution aspect of stepping back from humanness in order to be in the spirit of relationship to what gives me life and drives me is my evolution, if that makes sense. And so 3 steps back is the evolution process for me in that. And the more I rest in stepping back, the more I see whoever I am in the matter now that I don't know quite yet. It's the no longer who I was and not yet who I am. And part of me feels like I lived that my whole life. I've lived in this place that I'm never not really congealed, if you will. Maybe I'm not that amoeba thing. I'm like always in the movement of the amoeba kind of way of looking at myself. And so I'm appreciating how the polarity can inform who we are and how we hold and be with each other and be in relationship with the community of seen and unseen that moves with us. I'm complete.
Isn't that always the way it is, though? It may be always meant to be. That was so beautiful, what you said of the constant movement of who I was with who I am and who I'm becoming. You said it better. But that constant moving meta point
And
of
I'll feed into that too, because I was laughing as you were saying, Victoria. What the real challenge was I was 2,000 feet back. And so the challenge was being able to pay attention 2,000 feet back and moving back towards a new, what I think would be called a center point, a point where I went, this is now me. This is now me. And that's one of the interesting things. There is a this is now me, but we are unfamiliar with each other. Very good. Lori, you were going to say something?
and ourselves.
And ourselves, yeah.
And having conversations with it like this, it encompasses the whole dynamic of evolution. I mean, it's so broad and wide and deep, and when there's a chance to be in the company of others in this, there's that I'm not sure the word, I don't have a word that's coming up, but it's like that effortless being and honoring of all that is. And Victoria, it's interesting because when you said 3 steps back and 1 step forward, changing the dichotomy of what Alexa said, I instantly thought of, again, another Tai Chi thing about repulse monkey or cutting the pathway to clarity, honoring all of our ancestry, all of the history. You don't have to agree. You don't have to have any relationship to it other than the sacredness of all those steps all the support, all life that happened before the now moment is a part of me, a part of us. And wow, talk about information and, you know, information that will help us to move towards life rather than, like join with non-life, and it's like we all have our story with that. And the story is not what it is. The story is that it's like, it's all right here, right with us right now. And finding those access points to thread to create that tapestry upon which we can rest and be in the dance with life. I'm there. Join me there.
All right, we have a few minutes, but I wanted to say, because we do have a cultural global community that got started in 2014, and the foundation of it is a place to be safe. And every piece of trauma that's ever happened to any human being in any manner was when they weren't safe and there was no one there to help them be safe. And their connection to the greater power and forces of creation had gone missing too. So next week, I'm going to start the conversation with what we've discovered about human history. Because there actually have been events that have now been recorded that something actually may have happened to human beings that broke their relationship with the divine, with creation. So we're going to discuss that. The other, for note, is we can't miss we're in a biological evolutionary process. We're swimming in 5G. We're swimming in solar flares. We're swimming in shifts, ecological and environmental shifts. And if we think that's all part of the enemy trying to get us, we've been here before. Whales went to the ocean and stopped being land animals. We will evolve. And the one thing we have available to us without question is our own consciousness. Circumstances may change, environments may change, what the need of the physical forms may need to be to change. That's all in process now. We are in an evolutionary process. This is no longer choice. This is no longer choice societally. And then the last thing I just want to add to food that's not natural anymore, lots of stuff. But what I also want to say is language is changing. What words once meant, I think that was brilliant what Lori said about now what is function. Post-COVID, what people thought was function, a lot of people just stopped being that. But then the question is, well, what is function for me now? And that's really in people's face, really and the word empathy in my book, You as the Mind of Creation, which I keep asking me to read that chapter hundreds of times, is because we are starting to experience empathy as a different model of connection. Like we are the movement of creation picking up on what creation is picking up and being part of the greater whole, rather than an object picking up on another object. So words themselves are having to reframe themselves. Like what's well-being for me now? And it isn't because of my age. It's because of my direct connection with myself and what I came here to be, regardless of environment and regardless of events. So we'll be back. Some of us, it'll be different ones of us sometimes. I know Liz and Janice will join us next week, but we don't know who all will be there. But in the meantime, claim your right to evolve.
Mm.